What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadski, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video, and today we're going to be talking about a very, polarizing character, because I think a lot of people really wanted, like, the Garp and KOBY characters to be absolutely busted, like, really good, high-level units in One Piece Treasure Cruise, and they really haven't delivered on that, on that expectation that I think a lot of people had. The thing is, though, is that they're not bad units. They're just not as good as we kind of expected, and I guess, you do have to keep that in mind, that these units, they're just regular month batch legends with Garp, and then KOBY, of course, being a TM legend. So the TM legends definitely are like a tier above in most cases in terms of how good or how usable they typically are. And the thing is, I do feel like KOBY, he's not going to have a crazy amount of uses moving forward in the future, but I think there are going to be some key places where KOBY is going to be actually kind of useful. And I think in other treasure maps, he is going to be a pretty good character to use. He does have some very cool abilities that I think will be kind of useful in some other events, and it's just, we'll discuss his abilities and where I think the key points are about this unit. But I think, generally speaking, it's not a bad unit, it's just not as good as what most people kind of wanted, and that's just kind of how most legends feel like these days. If this character ain't a Super Sugo exclusive, then a lot of people just ignore it a lot of the time. But also, like, on that same token, it's hard to ignore legend releases when they basically cater all of this content about or around these new legend releases. So it does make things kind of annoying, and almost a lot of the time just feels like you kind of have to pull for these units in order to feel somewhat competitive in these events that are coming out. But let's discuss what KOBY's all about, right? Let's start things off with the fact that he's a Psi fighter and cerebral unit. Nothing really too crazy or unexpected in that regard. The captain ability, though, is interesting. He does provide -1 turn of cooldown at the start of the quest. And then, interestingly, in terms of the characters he gives the main buff to in his captain effect, he gives them to fighters and cerebrals, which makes sense. He then gives them to strikers. Now, that one is a bit perplexing. I think the key reason for that is because we had, I guess it's the Kujaku, Gru, and Hibari character that came out with Garp. That unit is shooter and striker. This character has the capability of buffing that unit, and then has another effect to change shooter class, the secondary shooter class, into a fighter. So it's basically like, it's tailor-made to make that unit 100% work under KOBY, which is just so annoying because there's so many, like, there's not many other characters that work in that situation aside from that character, that sword character. It's just strange, but anyways, this character will give those units, fighter, striker, cerebral, 5.25 times attack with a 1.25 HP boost, so pretty bare bones basic in terms of multipliers there. Psi and tandem slots will be matching as a captain, and also 15% damage reduction, which could be pretty key. He then says that if you have a fighter class territory active on the field, then he gives fighter characters a 6 times attack bonus instead, so that's obviously really good, but you only get it if you activate his special to apply that fighter territory. So it is what it is, and it is, I guess, a kind of a spoiler for those who don't know, the fighter territory that KOBY applies from his special, it does only last for 2 turns, unlike 3 turns from the other ones that we've seen previously. I can't remember if Garp applied a territory for like 2 or 3 turns, but a 2-turn territory definitely does make a bit of a difference. The only real time where a 2-turn territory would be good is if, like, an enemy revives, and then they revive, and then you have to kill them again, because that territory would still be active. So that's kind of cool, I guess. But 6 times bonus under that territory, during those burst turns is pretty solid overall. And then it says that if any character on the crew uses a special to apply a territory for any class at all, he heals the crew by 6,000 health at the end of the turn for 7 turns, so it applies end of turn healing, which works with the Garp legend that came out recently. He will then also remove 6 turns of special bind and 6 turns of bind. Now, that effect from KOBY can only trigger 2 times per quest, but that's pretty good, because if you do run double KOBY and you activate a territory special, both KOBYs will trigger to remove 12 total turns of special bind and bind, which is actually what they want you to do in the upcoming treasure map, is to have double KOBY, and then you apply a territory effect to then remove a bunch of special bind or a bunch of bind on the crew. So that effect is kind of cool, but at the same time, like, why doesn't he just straight up remove it? Like, why doesn't he just say, like, if you've got 4 fighters on your team or 6 fighters on your team, remove 10 turns of special bind and bind? The fact that you have to apply a territory special really devalues the usefulness of KOBY, because in order to actually use his effect to remove those gimmicks, you have to use his special. And sometimes you don't want to use the special at a certain point in time. Sometimes you want to save it for a certain particular circumstance, but basically it boils down to his special becoming a bind and special bind removal effect when you activate it as a captain. So there's positives and negatives to this, but overall there could be lots of use cases where that effect is very good. And look, we're just looking at it from the perspective of right now, but when we get more territory activated effects in the future that work under KOBY, this captain effect might be more useful. But as for right now, I don't feel like we have the tools to make this captain ability really busted. But as I said, when we get more territories, this could be very good. Now remember, when you use him as a captain, you'll get access to his superclass effect. The superclass is very easy to activate. You need either a Luffy, a Garp, Tashigi, Helmeppo, Groose, Kujaku, Hibari, or an X-Drake on the team. In most cases, it's probably going to be Garp or Luffy. In a lot of cases, sometimes you're able to make it work with the other units. Now this is where I think KOBY will see a lot of play. The fact that his super type special does 70 times his attack in non-type damage to all enemies, and it ignores defensive effects and base defense. So that is really, really clutch, because it does enable you to use it to wave clear other mini bosses on other treasure maps. So being able to launch that super class to do damage through everything except for, of course, normal attacks only is pretty valuable in TMs. And when we had a look at the captain effect, of course, when you use his special to remove 6 turns of bind and special bind, he has the other effect in his super class, which we'll go through in a sec right now, being able to remove special bind on himself by 10 turns. So he can be used to remove your crews or other characters special bind and bind when you trigger that special. So I think that there will be uses for him in future TMs. He also changes all slots including block into tandem, so that's dope. And remember, he makes tandem matching as a captain. He then also will extend the duration of end of turn healing by 1, and if a character's secondary class is a shooter class, he transforms that secondary class into fighter for 2 turns. Again, a 2-turn class change isn't as useful unless, of course, the enemy is in a revive mechanic state. So the super class, I think, is probably one of the big highlights here. The end of turn damage or the end of turn healing effect is kind of like whatever. The slot change is good, but the damage, the wave clearing mechanics he can get access to, massive positives for this unit. So let's go ahead and talk about his special ability. The special does a ton of damage. It does 150 times his attack and typeless damage to all enemies, which does go through all defensive effects and base defense once again. He will give Fighter Striker and Cerebrals a 2.75 orb boost for 2 turns. So not a crazy orb boost, but it's decent, I suppose. It then says that if he's in your captain position, if he's on the top row basically, then he applies a fighter class territory for 2 turns, and of course it gives basically a 1.5 times damage bonus to fighters and a 25% damage reduction so long as you have a full team of fighters. So as long as you're fully going in on that fighter class, that territory is very, very good. He then also says that the special will give everyone -1 turn of cooldown. Again, could be very useful in other TMs when you go to deal with special reverse mechanics. It then says that it will further increase your orb boost by 0.25 as well. So it basically makes his orb boost from his from his special ability a 3 times orb boost, which is actually pretty good. It's solid. It then says that if you use the special as a crewmate instead of a captain, then it will remove special bind and bind duration by 6 turns and extend the duration of the orb boost by 1 turn. And then after that, reduces damage nullification by 2 turns. So he's got a lot of different ways you can use him. If you use him as a captain, the orb boost that he grants is larger at the 3 times bonus. And then of course you get the territory effect. But if you use it as a sub, you don't get the territory, you don't get the buff to the orb boost, and also I don't believe you get the cooldown reduction either. But if you use it as a sub, you get the special bind and bind removal, which of course you get as the captain anyway, because when you use a territory special, when he's the captain, then you activate the effect in the captain effect to remove special bind and bind duration. But then if you use it as a sub, you get the bind and special bind removal by 6 turns, and then the orb boost from his special will be a 3-turn orb boost instead of a 2-turn orb boost. So I do think that you can use him in a lot of different ways. You can use him as a captain for wave clearing scenarios, or you can use him as a sub to do damage, have a 3-turn orb boost, and remove special bind and bind duration by 6 turns, and remove 2 turns of damage nullification. So he's kind of, honestly, the way that I see him, he's just a utility unit. He gets around a lot of really cool stuff. He's a damage dealing special, which is pretty clutch. And KOBY does have some niche supports that like only attach to him, which make him pretty valuable in certain circumstances. So I think KOBY overall, he's just a fine legend. I feel like that's the only real way to describe it, because he's not a bad legend. He really isn't bad, but he's nowhere near the top either. So that's the kind of perspective that I have on this unit. Of course, when you look at it in certain circumstances, he is a little bit of a strange unit, because he does have some pretty good crewmate abilities as well. So he's good as a captain, and he's good as a crewmate. He does have the ability as a crewmate where if you've got to fight a captain, he removes 1 turn of despair. That's just straight up really good. He does have the ability, of course, to remove Special Bind on himself to use that ability. His support effect is honestly pretty decent as well, being able to remove 2 turns of Bind anytime you're inflicted with it, and buffing your Orb Boost by 0.2. So that's a great support. Another Bind removal support for Luffy, and another really good one for Garp, good one for Tashigi, Helmeppo. So it's nice that these characters get access to that. And then, unfortunately, I do feel like his final tap is just very forgettable. It's just, you're never really going to use him for his final tap. The final tap effect does an effect where it reduces Rainbow Shield effectiveness on the enemy side of the field by 50%, which is just kind of weird, because it should just make his attacks bypass defensive effects instead of just make the Rainbow Shield on the enemy side of the field 50% less effective. It's just a very strange effect. It then will also further boost the chain multiplier by 2x. So if you have a chain of 7 times, when his final tap triggers, it will make it a 14 times chain. Or if you've got like a 12 times chain, it will go to a 24 times chain. So the better your chain, the better that this effect will be. But overall, we've had other characters in the past that have had final taps very similar to this, and they're fine. These are definitely better final taps than the ones that boost base attack by 1000 or whatever it may be. Definitely better than those types of final taps, but it's still not a great one at the end of the day. So you're not really going to use him for his final tap, you're going to use him for his utility, and that's the valuableness of this unit overall. So let me know your thoughts and opinions about KOBY down below in the comment section. Definitely far from a bad legend, nowhere near the worst legend that we've had in 2024, but definitely nowhere near the best either. So let me know your thoughts and opinions about this one, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure you go ahead and leave a like, and if you want to stay up to date with all the content that I post on the channel, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. But on that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.
こんだけ打ち込んで効かねえはずあるか。